So there was a father and a son who were talking about how tough their lives were. And in typical fashion, the son was complaining, and as fathers do, the father said, you have no idea what it's like to have tough times. When I was your age, boy, we had it tough. He says, when I was your age, you know that line? We had to walk to school 5 miles in the snow every day. Grandpa enters the fray from the other side of the room, and he said, hey, that's nothing. When I was your age, I didn't even have school. We just had to walk 5 miles in the snow, and then we turned around and went back home. You had no problems in your life. See, we all have our own versions of difficulties. They're all different kinds, but they're all real to us, no matter what they are. Maybe somebody else's, theirs is worse than ours on some kind of scale. But to us, it's all the same, no matter how old you are. Today, we want to look at a difficulty that the Israelites were facing. And the difficulty they were having was a people called the Midianites. The Midianites were an army that would every so often, for a period of 7 years, would attack them, drive them out of their homes, steal their livestock, take all their crops. And after 7 years of this, the people cried out to God, God, do something about it. Save us from this. Send some leader to us, which we do not have. Empower somebody to lead us so that we can overcome these Midianites. We can't take this anymore. So God, in his mercy and his love, did something for them, and the guy that he picked to lead them was a very unlikely choice for the task. Now, you have to understand that the reason that the Midianites were doing this to the Israelites was it was the Israelites' fault. The Israelites had been worshiping other gods, and God decided to do something to wake them up. He sent the Midianites in them to attack them so that they would realize their sinfulness and stop worshiping other gods and turn back to God. So when they called out to God, God responded. And he sent an angel to tell someone that he was going to be the leader to fix the problem, to at least lead them in overcoming that problem. And the guy's name was Gideon. Now, the angel came to Gideon in the story and tells him that he's been chosen for this task, and Gideon's response is not exactly inspiring. Gideon is weak, he is doubtful, he is fearful, he is not very perceptive, and he is manipulating. And yet, God, despite his shortcomings, raises him up to be that person to be used by God to overcome this great difficulty for the Israelites. Now, the scenario that's going on here is that the Midianites and their allies have crossed the Jordan River, and they're camped in a valley next to Gideon and his soldiers. And God is about to do something really quite extraordinary. So our passage today is in Judges. Judges chapter 7. Judges chapter 7. Judges chapter 7, verse 1. Judges chapter 7, verse 1. It's a pretty lengthy passage, and I'm going to read it in a couple different parts. Judges chapter 7. Early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead." So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon, "There are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there. If I say, 'This one shall go with you,' he shall go. But if I say, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink. 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, with 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300 who took over the provisions and trumpets of the other. So the Midianites, soldiers and their allies, are camped in a valley, and Gideon and his men are camped near a spring. So we're given the total number of soldiers that Gideon had as being 32,000. We're not given the exact amount of the enemy, but we're given some description of how many they had. It says they were like locusts, as thick as locusts in the valley, and their camels were as uncountable as the sands on the seashore. So I have a feeling they had way more than 32,000 guys. So they're outnumbered. Now, in light of this, the logical military strategy for Gideon is to do what? Get more guys. So I'm going to send out a word to Israel all over the land, all the tribes, and have them send me more men. And if that's not enough, I'm going to make a quick treaty with one of my neighboring countries. He's going to be my ally. I'm going to use some of his soldiers. We got to get at least as many guys as they have in the Midianites. I mean, that's what you would think they would do. But God has another idea. So he says to Gideon, Gideon, you got too many guys. Too many men. Have you seen how many soldiers they have over there? Have you seen what's going on in that valley over there? You want me to get rid of some of my soldiers. And the reason is that God says, I don't want you to be able to trust that when you win the victory, that it's your fault, that you can take credit for it. I want you to know that you didn't do this, that it was me. So he says, Gideon, I want you to tell your soldiers that any of them that are afraid, they can go home. I have a feeling there were probably a few of those. Well, there were more than just a few. Out of 32,000, 22,000 said they were too afraid to fight, and they went home. All right, God, 2/3 of my army just left. The odds are not getting better, they're getting worse. But, we're still in the thousands, so maybe we've still got enough to handle this. And God says to Gideon, you got too many guys. So I want you to get rid of some more. You want to repeat that? Are you sure? Are you sure that's what you want me to do? Yes, Gideon. I want you to get rid of some more. And here's how I want you to do it. You see that spring over there? I want you to tell all your guys to go over and get a drink. All 10,000 of them. And then depending on how they get the drink, that will determine whether they stay or whether they go. So he says, those guys who go over there and just put their mouths right down in the water, just like a dog, he says, they'll be one group. And then the other group that sort of cups their hands, puts their hands in the water, brings it out and drinks, that'll be the other group. And he says, the people that lap it like a dog, those people are leaving. The other people, those people are staying. So I can imagine Gideon watching this and going, oh, put your hands out. Come on, guys. I need you to stay around. But instead, 9,700 get down like a dog and drink the water. 300 are left out of 32,000 against an army that was way bigger than 32,000. Then God makes this statement to Gideon in verse 7. The Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. God is about to do something great. Without being able to depend on their own strength, the efforts of Gideon and his army will be magnified 100-fold through the power of God. There's a lighthouse in Bermuda called Gibbs Lighthouse that stands 350 feet above sea level. And the light from that lighthouse goes out 40 miles into the ocean. If you're out there 40 miles in a ship, you can see that lighthouse, Gibbs Lighthouse in Bermuda. And ships rely on that lighthouse to navigate the ocean and to keep from being destroyed on the shells and the reefs that are around the island. So it can be seen 40 miles out. But do you know that in that lighthouse is one single 1,000-watt light bulb? That light bulb can be seen 40 miles out. Why? Because it is surrounded by a series of powerful lenses and reflectors. Without them, that 1,000-watt light bulb would only cast a feeble glow. Now, on their own, Gideon and his men would only cast a feeble glow. But with God, their efforts are about to be magnified 100-fold. So, to continue the story. So that night, as Gideon is asleep in his camp, God comes to him and he tells him that he wants to go spy on the enemy. He wants him to know what they're saying in the enemy camp right now, because as you can imagine, Gideon is probably scared out of his mind. I got 300 guys against all those. I can imagine he was even sleeping at that point. So he went to the camp, he snuck out of his camp, and he snuck across the land between the two camps, and he comes to the edge of the enemy camp, and he goes up to one of the tents, and he hears one of the enemy soldiers talking to one of the other enemy soldiers. And that man says, I had a dream. There was a round loaf of barley bread that came rolling into our camp, and it hit one of our tents with such a force that it knocked over the tent. And the other soldier replied, well, there's no other way to explain that other than to say that this is the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, the Israelite, which means that God has given our camp into his hands. So this is what Gideon is hearing them saying. He's hearing them saying, God has given us the victory. If we had any fear before about being destroyed, we have no fear now. We will be victorious. We know in the end now who's going to win. It's going to change everything. If you lived in Hawaii, which I'm sure many of you would love to do, you would know that because Hawaii is such a great distance away from the continental United States where we live, that the time difference is great. There's a number of time zones between us and them. So that if you were to, say, be in Hawaii and want to watch a football game, let's say Monday night football game, and you're in Hawaii and it's played in the continental United States, like New York or Chicago, you would know that when it's live in New York or Chicago, it's in the middle of the afternoon in Hawaii. Well, nobody is home in the middle of the afternoon. They're all at work. And so what happens in Hawaii is the local TV station will then record the football game, and they'll play it in the evening at 6:30 so they can watch it when they're home from work. So one man who lives in Hawaii was thinking about this, and he says, when my favorite team plays in the continental United States, I'm too excited to wait to watch the game at 6:30. I want to hear it live. So he turns on the radio and he listens to the game in the middle of the afternoon. And then he says, because they're my favorite team, I watch the game at night when it's played again on television. Now, he says, if I know what the outcome has been of that football game because I listened to it during the afternoon, and I know that my team won, it really changes how I watch it in the evening. Let's say the football game is on in the evening. I've listened to it in the afternoon. I know how it comes out, and I know in the end that we win. And then when I watch it in the evening, let's say it starts to go badly for my team. There's a fumble. There's an interception. We're down by 10 points at halftime. It really changes my perspective on the game in the evening when I know how it's going to come out by listening to it in the afternoon. I don't worry in the evening if we're down, if something bad happens, because I know in the end we win. I think that's what God is doing for Gideon. He's saying, you know what? No matter how bad it seems now, I want to tell you that how it's going to go in the end. I want to tell you that in the end, you're going to win. So relax, rejoice, inspire your troops, get out there, because you are going to be victorious. Now let's go back to our passage in Judges chapter 7. Judges chapter 7, verse 15. When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and called out, "Get up! The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands." Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them with torches inside. "Watch me," he told them. "Follow my lead. When I get to the edge of that camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp, blow yours and shout, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew their trumpets and broke the jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hands and holding in their right hands the trumpets they were to blow. They shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." And while each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. The army fled to Bethshittah toward Zerah as far as the border of Abel-Meholah near Tabbath. Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and all Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan ahead of them as far as Beth-barah." So, hearing the soldier's dream was all the confirmation that Gideon needed to know that God was going to give them the victory. So he goes back to his men and he wakes them up to get them ready for battle. And this is his strategy. He divides his 300 men into 3 groups, 100 in each. He gives each man a trumpet, a torch. The torch flame is surrounded by a jar so that you cannot see the flame inside the jar. And then he tells them to go to the area around the valley where the soldiers are camped, to surround them on all sides, the 300 men. And at his signal, they are to blow their trumpet, break the jar so the flame is revealed, and shout out, "For the Lord and for Gideon." That's the plan. And I'm thinking some of the guys who are listening to this are thinking, and then what? I don't know. But they do it. Gideon sets them up. And the 3 companies, in the middle of the night, when it's dark, they are surrounding the enemy soldiers who are in the valley, each man holding a trumpet and a torch covered by a jar. And he says, when I give the signal, I want you to blow the trumpet, break the jar, revealing the flame, and shout out, "For the Lord and for Gideon." He gives the signal, and they do just that. and the enemy soldiers who have been asleep. You can imagine being surrounded on all sides with these flames, trumpets going off, men shouting about God and Gideon. How confused that would be. And they started running. And they were so confused, they ran into each other and thought that each other was the enemy, and they started fighting among themselves. And the guys who didn't die from that, who were able to break out of that valley, then Gideon sent out the call to the rest of Israel to come and enjoy the harvest, to kill all those men. And they did. They were destroyed because God gave them the victory. The victory was complete. And the point is that the victory came not from them. There was no way they could say, aren't we great? This is all our fault. We deserve all the credit for this. No, it was, we had the victory and it came from God. So God gets the glory and Gideon and his people get the victory. And in the end, they turned back to God. We all face difficulties. We all face struggles of varying kinds. They're all as real to us as any other difficulty that anybody faces. God wants us to trust in Him and not ourselves. God wants to be the one to give us the victory. And sometimes God gives us victory in amazing, unexplainable, this can only be God kind of ways. And guess who gets the glory for that? Not me, not you, but God. So no matter what your difficulty is today, give it to God and let Him give you the victory.